on this episode of Unglossy.
And that's what I bring to artists like LL. I'm not toning down, but now I'm going in. You already got that part, but what if you actually went left on here and not left just physically, but left in how you described it? And what if you allowed this part to breathe so that by the time, we're not even expecting that because you didn't start there. And then what if you actually told me the story so that then there can actually be a peak in it as opposed to you tapping out by the time you get to the first verse?
From the top,
Yeah,
I'm Tom Frank.
I'm Mickey Fax.
And I'm Jeffrey Sledge.
Welcome to Unglossy, decoding brand and culture. I'm Tom Frank, partner and chief creative officer at Merit Creative. This is Mickey Fax, hip-hop artist and founder and CEO of Pendulum Inc. And that is Jeffrey Sledge, a seasoned music industry veteran who has worked with some of the biggest artists in the business. We're here to explore the moments of vulnerability, pivotal decisions, and creative sparks that fuel the relationship between brand and culture. Get ready for a thought-provoking journey into the heart and soul of branding, the unscripted, unfiltered, and truly unglossy truth. Unglossy is brought to you by Merit Creative. Looking to skyrocket your business's visibility and drive growth? At Merit Creative, we solve your brand and marketing woes. With big ideas, decades of experience, and innovative solutions, we'll draw in your target audience and keep them hooked. Remember, creativity is key to success. Partner with Merit Creative and unlock your brand's potential. Learn more at meritcreative.com. And now, part 2 of our conversation with KJ Rose. So you're having all this success,
Yeah.
as an artist and a recording, and what happened? When did you decide to transform from performing to coaching?
The beginning of the transition into performance direction, I would say, happened with Carolyn Williams, who was doing marketing at J Records at the time. And so they had artists over there. They had been to my shows. Everyone liked my level of performance, but it was just the music, I guess, wasn't hitting them the way it needed to. And so it was a tough call because I wanted that call to be about me as an artist, but it was really about coaching other artists, and I had to have like a heart to heart and say, you're not, if you say yes, it's not that you're saying yes in lieu of something not working out, because then you're just bitter. You're a better coach. And I said, maybe this is the natural progression. This is this and this, not or this. And so once I started leaning into helping artists to really reintroduce them to themselves, that was it. And to help them excavate assets and understand what their kind of areas of strengths were, and push them beyond their perceived capacity. I realized that brought me more joy than being an artist. And even though, so while I was at Clive, I left for a second. I did a little performance direction there, but then I still left, went back on the road with Janet. And then I came off the road, and then I went to work at Sundance Channel. It was Channel then, now it's TV. And then that's when I really put out my album. So you utilized every department for my album: marketing, strategy, whatever it was, and promotions, and then put out my album called All Heart No Regrets. And I did a radio tour on that. And then after that, I felt like I had completed the task, right? I had people like No ID and Extreme and Andy C and Dwayne Bastiana giving me tracks and believing in me to a point where it wasn't translating into a body of work. And so I was like, I got to complete this task. And after I did that, I was like, okay, now I'm going fully into performance direction, artist development.
I got to go back because what a lot of people don't understand is like getting an assistant job for a Clive Davis or a Jimmy Iovine. These are hard fucking jobs to get. Like this ain't like just call the temp agency. Like it's like
No,
because you're working at such a high level. You're working at such a high level, and you're dealing with such high level people who are calling in and setting up meetings and stuff.
Right.
So I want to talk a little bit about that. Because obviously Clive is an iconic music executive, top three. I would put him at top three.
Yeah.
Some people say five. I would say three of all time. So I want to talk a little bit more about that. Like obviously, I know the day-to-day duties were taking care of him, but what are some of the things that you saw? I know you talked about asking questions about why you picked the single for Monica, or Alicia, or whatever. But what are a couple of things that you saw that were like eye-opening, I
Yeah.
guess, and and maybe you used for
Yeah, no,
yourself?
it's a good question. I would say my greatest takeaways is watching him never rest on yesterday's success, never resting on his past laurels. You know, um, if Aretha was at number one on a Tuesday, he's gonna keep working to maintain, that level of dominance. No matter what artist is in that spot. So that was it. Like now, I'm just like I may have had a great Monday, but now we got to keep going. Like I give myself a little bit of time to just say, great job. I might go have some crab legs, celebrate myself, whenever there's a small or a big win. But I got to keep going. Like I am in the
Mm-hmm.
grind within the next few days. I would say additionally, it was, his work ethic. Um, he was there. He was the last one to leave the building. So there were two of us, and it was Paula and myself, and then Dina worked for Charles Goldstuck. So I went in between Clive Davis and Charles Goldstuck, and I only worked. Now, when I first started working there, I was just the receptionist, and I was happy with that because it allowed me to record my music during the day and then work for Clive from 5 to 9. And so, people were coming in, Swizz and Alicia and Tyrese and, Mario. And I want to sing my song, but I'm like saying, you got to stay focused. This is why you got hired. And within a few months, they said, would I work for Clive? And my initial thought was no. And then my sister, CJ, Cynthia Johnson, was like, yo, this is a great opportunity. And I realized that no area
Mm-hmm.
or expertise I had, this would be invaluable information. And so then that's when I started working for him. And so I would say like between the work ethic and then lastly, he called everybody back.
Mm.
Now, I saw who got the return calls quicker, and it was the one that was persistent, but not, kind of like unruly and exhausting. But it was like finding that great balance of checking in and I saw the emails. And so I think that watching that is why I'm so keen on making sure that I get back to people, whether they got something from me or not, right? Whether there's an even exchange or not, I still try to make sure I respond to everyone that has an inquiry or that just wants some advice or just wants to share.
Wow.
I got a little story about that getting back thing. So, because I used to get at dudes all the time, would hit me with the yo, I was gonna call you, but it's hectic. I used to tell this story. So, when Backstreet Boys first got signed to Jive, they got signed by this guy named Dave McPherson, and Dave was a young A&R guy. He didn't know Clive at all, but he was working on the record, and he called um, put a CD at that time and messenger the CD with a note to Clive. He didn't know him at all. And he
Mhm.
said, "Look, these are like 4 or 5 of the songs that we recording." He introduced himself and blah blah blah. He said, "This record's coming out on Jive, and I would, I just would love to get your ear. Like, I just would love to get you if you, listen to it. Let me know what you think." And he just put it in a thing and sent it. Again, he didn't know Clive from a can of paint. Never met him. And about a week later, maybe that later that week or whatever, Clive messengered the CD back with a 4-page letter breaking down each song, saying, this one is the bridge is strong enough on this one, or this one the chorus that breaking it down. And I used to tell people, if Clive Davis can send a note back to a guy he doesn't know, breaking down songs, there's no excuse you got for me telling me you couldn't call me back. There's no
Wow.
excuse. You're
Dang.
just slack. To get to that level, you got to be so on point. Obviously, as he was, still is actually. Like, you got to be on another level because you never know sending that note back what that turns into later down the road. And that always impressed me about him. He was able to do that. But I didn't want to hijack it. Back to you, KJ.
Well, that's because KJ Rose wrote that letter, and did such a great job with it.
Wait,
Maybe
but
she
here's
did.
the funny thing. I don't think I was there yet.
Maybe.
But here's the funny thing. So I did take a lot of dictation, right? And so when I let him hear my record, imagine him
Ooh.
regurgitating those words that I would dictate to other people. in
Yeah.
email back. I was like, oh,
Back to you.
you don't have to say this. And so, his one of his lines was, "I know you appreciate my candor." That was like that was
That's how he opened it up.
you're like, "I know you appreciate my candor. Not sure if this is da 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 da." And so when he started, I was like, "Oh my god, I could have wrote this." And so no, but it was but really appreciated that he took the time to listen.
Yeah.
And so those
Exactly.
were some
Exactly.
great
Exactly.
like educational moments.
So speaking of education, though, you have this real life education, but you also went and got a degree at business administration, right, from Florida A&M. So there was a bit of you
Yes.
that kind of was already thinking about this path even back then, right?
Well, I just figured no matter what I decided, there would be a business
Yeah.
element to it. So I wasn't, I think I took these baby steps. It was like there was an internship being offered at Pfizer in New York. I was like, okay, I kind of want to do music. Now, just because I probably sang the best out of my friends at school, I didn't think that constituted an entire career in New York, right? But I was like, but maybe I'll just work behind the scenes. I just knew that I needed to get to New York, and I got an internship at at Pfizer in corporate finance, and that's when the funny thing is, after that I came back, I graduated, and then my good friend is this when I met the guys? It might have been on this internship because my good friend Shelly, she's my soror, I pledged Delta, and she was best friends with John Platt. Everybody know John, Big John? And so
Big
he
John.
came to
Yeah.
her graduation, where he runs publishing now, but at that time, he was at EMI. And so he came to her graduation, and all of my friends were like, that's the singer, that's the music girl. And even at Jack the Rapper, I shouldn't even been there. We just went one time, same friends, because we were in Florida. I think this was in Tampa or something. And Big walked by and they were like, sing for him. And I was like, I'm not a clown, I'll just sing on the spot. And forward to Big John being at her house, and they were like, sing for John. I was like, I'm not a clown, and I don't just sing on the spot. And he was like, well, I'll leave tomorrow. And I was like, yeah, and I am telling you. And he put me with my first management team when I went out for that internship. And so it helped me really cultivate this gift, and at the same time get, not dive feet first or head first into the New York music industry, but just almost like tentatively tiptoe into it.
So we got to dive into the Rose effect, right? I mean, with the Rose effect, right? Now you are helping artists, you're writing books, you're doing it all right now. But before we get to the book,
Yes.
so Lil Nas X, right? So you got an amazing record behind you. Where did that come from? And is that, I guess that's was that one of your first clients, or would you say it's one of your biggest ones?
First for the world. It
Yeah.
was the biggest proof of concept. I had been doing it when I lived in New York before I moved to LA. After while being at J Records, I worked with a lot of independent artists. I then was a coach on Chasing Destiny, which was Kelly Rowland's show on BET. This is when I got to LA in maybe 2015. And so then from there, this was me stalking like Frank Gatson and Stephen Hill. I'm like, I know you got a show. I read it. It's happening. I need to be on it. And then fast forward to being on an show called Revenge Body that Khloe Kardashian had, and they were looking for a performance coach. And so, those were my kind of entry points into LA as a performance director. But I had also been good friends, and my soror Felicia Fant was at Columbia Records. So when they got Lil Nas, he had no performance points on the board, right? It was this song took this meteoric rise, but like now he needs to do a video. His next show was Stagecoach, and then he was doing a Taco Bell commercial, all
Wow.
within a month. And so it was like, how do you take someone that is brilliant, and then but help them now create a story that is able to harness that brilliance, and then you can tell that story for 45 minutes to an hour on stage. And so she called me and we went to work. just in the studio and helping him to really understand what that story and to build that story. So this was before, he was his truest self. Uh,
Yeah.
it came out. This was, all about like, what is Old Town Road? Where we going? Why you care? Why should we care? Like really digging into those hard questions. And sometimes he's just like, I don't know. But it was like, it was the repeating of it all. Like, what is this? What is the messaging? And so, my job is to help you find the light, find the story, and then push and access and then activate what that looks like long before the music comes. So I strip people down from, the rhythm, the countenance, the movement, and sometimes the sound. Like, what does this story look like if there was no sound? What does it look like if the next few rows of people had they were visually impaired and they only had sound? How do you make sure that everybody feels included? So whatever their perceived
Mm.
capacity was, my job was to push them beyond that, help them re-champion their story, help them to show up for it, and then we had to figure out what is your force. And then in that's when we're able to seize the power of you telling a story that can't be negotiated or hijacked.
Wow.
Now, did you come up with these concepts on your own, or is this something that you kind of studied from other people, or was a combination of the two to
No,
kind of put this
it
together?
is having been a performance artist, and the things that helped me get through that stage fright. And everybody gets something different, right? So there is the core of, the three verticals that I work from, which is show up, embrace your force, seize your power. But what I give to Polo G, I can't get a Nas. And what I get a Nas, I can't get a LL. And I can't get that to Sweetie. So everybody then, we are building their own toolkit to be able to you know make sure they drop no moments. And so I think one of the other kind of moments I could have retired, I have two moments, and one was working with LL and the other one was working with Nas. And he had never headlined a show on his own, and so last February he headlined at the Garden.
Hmm.
And so
Wait, up
Wow.
until last February, he had never headlined?
he had been with, I think, Wu Tang, and he had been, I think, with Lauren or Mary, and but this was his first time ever headline a show himself, not being a guest,
Mm.
part of the ensemble. And so Gabe,
Wow.
his manager, brought me in, and we went to work. And so I listened, to like all the songs, top to bottom. And so I love that people allow me to just be as rogue as I can be, because I love the music, right? And I think, I'm hip hop. So, I was listening to the music, and he was like, you got some notes for me. And I like took a scroll, and I was like,
Do
do
I
I?
have notes for you?
Do I?
And I was like, so for him, I think what happens is you are on tour for so long, and you are telling these stories that you have written back in the 90s. And so how do you still tell it with the same vigor and a new inspiration and a new excitement? How do you make sure that you're not just saying lyrics based on routine, that we don't leave any lyrics behind? And so I was like, yo, you the only messenger we got. So and your job is not to just speak to the people that have grown with you, but you're trying to get some new ambassadors. Your job ain't to just speak to the people on the floor, but we're trying to shoot to the back of the building. So
Mm.
every lyric has its own pulse. You need to get up off this flow. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not giving him no 8 count, but I'm like, if you brought the energy to, the lyrics and the phrases, then your body would move differently. One mic shouldn't look like If I Rule the World. We telling different stories. So what are those
Right.
stories? And so, he was like, all right, all right. And so I think, I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I came in. I know I came in hot. I came in hot. And so my job was to make sure that separately, the band gave everything that they were born to give, and then and that Nas told his story in an exciting way that it reinvigorated him, and then we had to come together so that we told one story in the most powerful way. And so, sometimes I would stop, like the band, I don't know where I got this courage from, but they'd be going, I'd be like, we're gonna have to stop that, we're gonna stop, can we just stop for 1 second? And I was like, ooh, What did you do? And I was like, yo, the drummer just hit the coldest hit ever, and I don't feel like you acknowledged it. And he was like, all right, all right. And so the acknowledgement could be a pause. The acknowledgement could be, moving with your body. The acknowledgement can be looking, but I need everybody to acknowledge what's happening on this stage. Because when you think it's cold, then the audience feels your energy, and then we just stand across the building. Anyway.
So is your job then, just so I completely understand,
Yes.
you, in essence, are the director of the performance,
Yes.
right? So every piece of it,
yes,
you are the one that you guys are practicing endlessly before you would go on a tour, and you're the behind the minute, every moment that is occurring. Is
Yeah.
that a good way to portray
That's
it?
a great way to put it. And so it's funny when you said performance coach initially, when you said, is that factual? I was just going to let it be because I gave myself a promotion after working with Lil Nas and Elton John to be the performance director. Okay. And
I like
so,
that.
but always looking for ways to communicate what I do. Sometimes, I think early on it was exhausting because people would be like, oh, you're a vocal coach. I'm like, nope. Oh, you're a choreographer. Nope. So then I was like, vocal coaches deal with the instrument. Performance directors, performance coaches deal with the behavior. And then choreographers give you the 8 count, but a performance coach will make the 8 count count. Right? That's my job. So I always akin myself to a solid rocket booster, where I help you course correct. I help you get in flight. And then once we had figured out that strategy, I break away. And so I always run, I hope you get out of the blocks from a cold start. I always run the first leg of this race of an artist. And then I pass the baton to whoever else is next. But it made no sense for Lil Nas to first be equipped with a choreographer when we ain't got a story yet. You know what I mean? You just see moves. So the story is necessary, like the resolving of things that have brought you fear or caused you to be a little less than yourself or caused you to be disappointed. All those things are so necessary in being tapped into so that you can tell a story that has no it is not, it's free. You can tell a story that shows your freedom and that makes you feel uninhibited.
You're working with performers, but
Yeah.
then we also mentioned in the very beginning about those collaborations with brands.
Yes.
So how does that work? What's your portion or part of that? Like when you're working with Doritos, Adidas, Amazon, some of these major brands that you've gotten to work with.
Yeah. So I think some of that is corporate too. So for Lil Nas, I coached him when he was doing the Taco Bell commercial and the Doritos commercial. And then the Uber Eats commercial, which then brought in Elton John. So a lot of times those brands are associated with the
Got
artist.
it.
But then
Did you do Logitech with him?
no. Mm-mm.
Oh, see, I did Logitech with him
Okay.
for the Super Bowl. I was thinking we ran into each other at some point,
Oh,
but you weren't part of that. Okay. I was hoping you were.
yeah. Or do you work with Logitech?
They were a past client of mine. And at the time, they chose Lil Nas X to be their ambassador for a series called Creators. And it was all about transitioning their brand to be less about the individual pieces of equipment like a mouse and a keyboard, but rather instruments for creators.
Yeah.
And so he became a big part of that Super Bowl ad, all the social media around it.
Yep.
And that was kind of an interesting time because that was a bit of a risk for Logitech. And it came right out with his next album, which I'm blanking on the name of it, but it was a little bit controversial.
Baby.
Say it again.
That what did the Jack Harlow Industry Baby and all those songs.
The Call Me by Your Name.
Montero was the second album, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that was it.
Montero.
Yeah.
Montero. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was an interesting time. Logitech took a step, and then I'm not sure if they thought it was a good one or not, because it was an interesting mix of brands and artists.
Yeah.
So, Nas, Mickey definitely knows this. Nas has been known as like not the best performer. So you're talking about you had to pull a lot out of him and let him be free, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I didn't go to that Garden show, but I heard a lot about it and I heard it was amazing.
Yeah.
Because did his mom, somebody, he was crying or something at the end of the show? something. It was his mom or something. But anyway, that's not the
Across the
point.
street from the garden.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
What happened across the street
yes.
from
I
the
knew it
garden?
was
Really
something
say
like
people aren't the best performers. I just say people have not yet tapped into the fullness of what they can be. You know,
Mm.
that's how I
yes.
go into this. So we tapped into the fullness per Vibe magazine and some other magazines that night. They said that was one of his best performances.
I was gonna say real quick on the other side with somebody like LL, who's mad
That
energetic. He's been performing for literally probably
yeah,
40 years now. Yeah, 85 was the first album. So it's been 40 years. I've seen him several times. He's mad energetic. You know, he's doing the gear shift with the mic
yeah.
stand and take his shirt off, like all that. So how do you work with, how does that work with somebody who is already like super
Yeah.
energetic and very animated as a performer? What
Are
do you
you
do
toning him
in that
down?
side?
Well, no, you know what?
Well, maybe.
Because I remember my friend Nick and I went to his album release, and shout out to Claudine for even thinking of me in this capacity. But we went to this album release,
Mm,
and he pretty much performed every song. And my friend looks at me because I was working with him on Passion the next day, and my friend looks at me, the new
okay.
song. It was a video shoot, and she was like, "Well, he seems like a great performer. What do you think you're gonna do?" And I was like, "Yeah, I hope they don't call and say that they're good." I was like, it occurred to me, and so I started digging. I was like, "What?" Because even before that, like a week prior, I was with Claudine at the Four Seasons with our friends Amber and DJ Kiss, and Elle walked in, and then she started telling us that he was working on this new album and blah blah, and she told him what I did, and this really is how it happened. It was like a couple of weeks ago, and then he said, "Well, why don't you come upstairs? Why don't everyone come upstairs and listen to the album?" And so it was myself here and him literally across the table, like performing every song to me. He was like, "Passion." I was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing." And what I realized, I had to sit down and this happens a lot when you're like, you never again rest on your past laurels. You never get too comfortable. I'm always looking for ways to sharpen and to get better and to have more armor for my artist. And I was like, what are you going to do with him? And I watched everything, and I realized that what I do for certain clients, I akin to someone walking into the salon um,
Mm.
with long hair. They're
Mm.
not trying to change the length. They're just trying to get some dimension, get some layers, and get some depth. And that's what I bring
Mm,
to artists like LL. I'm not toning down, but now I'm going in. You already got that part, but what if you actually went left on here, and not left just physically, but left in how you described it? And what if you allowed this part to breathe so that by the time, we're not even expecting that because you didn't start there. And then what if you actually told me the story so that then there can actually be a peak in it as opposed to you tapping out by the time you get to the first verse? And what if I'm watching you on screen and I really don't want to break away because you might do something different as opposed to the expected performance? Then I can go do 5 errands and come back and know it won't change. So that became the conversation with us
Mm.
for the force.
mm.
That's
Dope,
good.
dope, dope, dope.
Wow.
I,
That's dope. I want to know that.
I mean,
What you got, Mick?
I'm sitting here just in awe. I mean, I think that, as an artist myself and someone who performs and just hearing this incredible story from KJ Rose, got to say the full name.
thank you.
You know what I'm saying? It's just,
We're tight
it's,
now. I can call her KJ.
What the only reason, so it's funny because a friend would be like, "No, say your whole name," but Rose is my middle name. And if you read the book, then you would also remember that Rosa is my paternal grandmother's name, Rose is my maternal grandmother's name, and Rosa is my mama's middle name. So I can't leave off the Rose.
Can't
It's
leave out
you
the
know,
road.
Can't leave
that's why I
those.
show respect. That's she said it. She said it. That's, you know what I'm saying? Like, you gotta listen to the black woman, man. That's what I do.
You
You know
gotta
what I'm
listen
You're
to
saying?
the
That's
black
correct.
what I
You are
woman.
do.
Listen to the
correct,
black
You know
Ricky.
what I'm
woman.
You
saying?
are
That's what
correct.
I'm
Don't
Legacy,
say
saying.
that a lot, but I'll
legacy,
say it now.
ancestors.
You know what I'm saying? It's an ancestral thing, you
Yes.
know. But again, I'm inspired. Like I think that hearing these stories, working with iconic legends, in the music industry, and even new legends, right? Lil Nas X and the things that he was able to accomplish, with his first record, and being able to transform seemingly internet sensation, right? Like this guy was just he was just posting stuff on whatever platform he was posting it on, and next thing you know, it just kind of catches fire, and he becomes this global artist.
Yeah.
And being able to work with him, so you kind of worked with 3 to 4 generations of different artists across the gamut of music, and just to hear how you're able to help somebody that is, wet behind the ears like a Lil Nas X, and somebody that's seasoned like a LL Cool J, and still come back with great feedback to improve,
Yeah.
that just lets me know that there is still ways to elevate yourself as an artist or as a person in general. How do you become better than you were yesterday? And I
Right.
think that's the power of what it is that you do and what it is that you do. And I'm just grateful for you to share these things, not only with us here at Unglossy, but also our listeners, because I think it's very important. I think that LL Cool J story is very,
Is it
very important for people to hear. This guy is a legend. He's been doing this, like Jeff said, 39 years. Next year will be 40 years that he would have put out his first record.
Yeah.
And that means he'll be what, like 55? You
Okay.
know,
Yeah,
Like
yes,
that. I
like
don't
that.
tell nobody's number. So
I mean, but how do you but then you
Yeah.
but then you got to think, like, how do you tell someone of that stature, that caliber of
right.
artist,
Right.
how to improve? Like that is when most of the time they have teams and they around yes men and people
Yeah.
that like to massage the ego. You
Yeah.
come along to help enhance what is already there,
Right.
right? And
Right.
even you just working with Janet, because like I know for a fact you listened to Janet or watched Janet when
Yeah.
you were a child. Like that,
Yeah.
to me, that is always going to be mind blowing for someone such as myself who's an artist.
Amen. Amen. I gotta say that, shout out to I learn from every artist, whether it is, Erica Campbell or Sweetie or, Ruby Rose or Honey Baby. I learn from every artist, and I don't judge the art. That's not my job. My job
Right.
is to make
Mm.
sure that whatever they're saying that they believe, right? And
Mm.
sometimes we've done things where it's like they didn't really believe in it. I'm like, well, what else we gonna say then? And so, what I loved about working with artists, legacy artists like Nas and LL, is that they were open for the sharpening, right? And so I was like, when I got on set, it's again, you just never know what the energy is like and how someone works, and where I may come in and immediately pounce. That's not how people work all the time. And so I got to give love to the women at Def Jam that created a space for me to be truly uninhibited so that I could actually be my best self on that set, so it was like,
Right.
um, I think that and then when I first got there, I said to Elle, I said, look, because I prayed. I was like, Lord, how is this supposed to go? What do you want me to do? Because sometimes, you know, when you're in the fullness of you, that could be a lot for people, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you change the core. It may mean that you got to give yourself in bits,
Right.
that it's palatable, right? So I was like, all right, Lord, tell me the best way to go about this. So when I got there, I said to Elle, I said, what is the best way to serve you in the way that you work?
Mm.
And he said, just contribute. If you see something, I'm open for your ideas and your contributions. And then they messed around and gave me a megaphone. And I was like, you done messed
Woo!
up now. I mean, and so it was
Woo!
like, it was I am always learning. I'm always looking for the way to expand. And so, yeah, I had that opportunity to work on 3 of his videos. One comes out on Friday, Proclivities with Sweetie. And so I got to shout out to the women that I've worked with, and so she's just a joy. And so that video shoot will come out on Friday. And I'm grateful that I get to serve people in this way. And I always tell them I don't give anybody something they don't already possess. My job is just to irritate and agitate areas of potential that they didn't realize they had, or that was merely lying dormant. That's it.
I
And
love
so
that.
once people realize, because I think, a lot of times it's not the artist's idea for me to be there. I'm talking about the younger ones, where the translation for them is something must be wrong, right? Because
Mm.
the label sends them in. And
Right.
so where I pull in, I'm just glad that nothing goes to waste, right? So as an artist, knowing what it felt like to have everybody have an opinion on what I do, or to someone to have a constructive critique, whatever it was. So I learned very quickly that in order to have a great session, I've got to disarm them in the beginning. I'm not above them. I'm not below them. I see where you are. I am vulnerable first before I ask for their vulnerability.
Mm.
I let them know that if you are in my presence, if you are, and that's my own work that I got to do, of knowing I'm supposed to be in that room, right? So I've got to have a very impenetrable sense of confidence, so that I say to them, if you were sent here, that means that they are ready to fully invest in you.
Right. Right.
I wouldn't be here any other way. Like, I don't play around with this. You know what I mean? So I think once they see that, like, I remember one artist came in and he was like, "Look, I gotta go in an hour." And I'm like, "But I got you for 2." And he's like,
Mm.
I gotta go, get my clothes for the showcase tomorrow. And I was like, the showcase that is going to really declare whether they keep you as an artist? Is that the showcase we're talking about?
Talk about it.
Look at me, and I'm like, I'd much rather you be ready for the performance and not have a belt than be looking good and not have a good performance. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
So it's like, I think, and sometimes they don't understand like who I am. They're trying to figure out what generation I'm in, because I'm always with my J's, and but then when I talk, I sound like I could be their older sister. So it
Right.
is like a level of earned trust that has to happen, and a mere respect. And so, like, one of my, I know I'm talking now, y'all got me excited, but here's one of my like favorite moments as a coach. There was Polo G,
Mm.
Fabio, and Lil TJ. Now, I like to get there ahead of schedule so that I can dip into everybody's room and just let them know, because nobody wants to be corrected in front of other people.
Right.
Yes, right? So I'm like, all right, okay, I got to do this quick. I got to get in. But I had done this was during the pandemic. I had done a Zoom presentation for Sony executives, like a workshop. And so I was a little behind. So anyway, I get there. They're already like kind of starting to do little pickups. And, I'm asking so-and-so's manager, whoever, to like to introduce me, but they not focused on that. Like, I'm a small part. I'm the piece they don't know they need, but they will be happy that they had when I'm done.
Right.
Right?
Love that.
So, and I can't be frustrated and just be like, you need. I'm just like, that's okay. I'm gonna have to move slow, and I have to move strategically. So the first time they yelled cut, I went into Lil TJ and I said, "Whose video is it?" And he was like, "Mine." I was like, "I can't tell." And then I backed up and I let them go.
Ooh.
And so I always know when I walk away, they still looking at me. I be like, oh, I can't tell. So I'm like, I need more, right? So then I come back, then they yell cut again. I go up to Polo G. I was like, yo, we've been here before. Like, if I can't see you, nobody else can. I need you to have more eye contact with the audience. You know what I mean? Pick your head up, da da da. And then I back off. And then with Fabio, I came in, I was like, yo, every time you give me this grunt of energy, I was like, it is powerful, but you don't really believe it. And so it's not counting. I need you to make it count. Right? So now I have gotten all of them individually. Right? So then the next time they yell cut, I can yell at all three, because
Mm.
I'm yelling in a way to just empower them. But they have each already had my wrath, my soft wrath. Now, as a unit, I'm like, what we doing? Now, I didn't have my megaphone then, but Lil TJ posted, if you ain't got no hype crew like this, no hype person like this, get rid of him. If your crew don't hype you up like this, get rid of him. And that was a video he put on TikTok that went viral. And so it was like, it's the moments that you can't read about. Like I can only understand because of maybe the last session I did, right? This ain't in no book. This comes from being booed at the Apollo. This comes from getting to Heavy's video shooting, them saying ain't nothing for you to do in the video, and having to go back to New York after you in LA for the video shoot, only for Hev and his people to call you a week later and say, can you do the remix of Big Daddy? Right? So then the unmature me, I'm not gonna say immature, the one that has not matured yet would have said, I'm good, right? Because I'm like, I've been here before. I know how this works. Y'all ain't gonna play me again. But then the one that was a little wiser said, but then they'll call somebody else. This ain't personal.
Right.
They don't know you well enough for this to be personal. Anyway, that's all I got.
Woo! I got 3 last things to say.
Okay.
Number 1, I think the best quote I saw from you, and I love this, and I'm going to use it in some way.
Okay.
If you don't know your dopeness, we've got a problem. That is a
I love that.
great quote. I love that.
Thank
My
you.
second thing for you,
Yes.
all these artists out here, if there was one artist that you're looking at and you say, if I could have that person for 1 hour, I could make them better. Like, who's that artist that you think that you want to work with, that you haven't worked with?
That's a tricky thing to say.
It is a tricky thing to say. I might have not asked that the right way. But who is that artist, though, that you see so much potential with?
Okay, I like that. You'll edit that other part out.
I'll edit that.
Let's see. The artist that I see so much potential with. Let me just say that if I can have an hour with the new generation of female MCs, I would love to embolden them, empower them even more.
I
They're
like that.
off.
All right, and then we're gonna end with this.
Okay.
Since you're touching base with all these different people, you
Yeah.
got 3 of us on here that do this show.
Yes.
Give us your tips. What are we doing wrong? What are we doing right?
Well, I don't really work in the wrongs and rights. I work in the current, and then let's just go higher. The current,
Okay.
let's go higher. I would start with wanting to be able to see Jeff for sure, because that's who brought me on. That's my homie. I want to see his face. But no, let me just say that what you guys are doing is so necessary so that people don't forget the unglossy part, right? They just see these machines running smoothly and they have no idea that what it takes, and the team of people that are behind them, and then also the mindset and the tools that one must have to keep that machine going. So just to expose that on this platform, and each of you brings something different, in terms of your gifts and your talents, and so I'm grateful to be here. And so what I have witnessed thus far shows me you're on your way. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
KJ Rose. I think that says it all. Thank you. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing so much wisdom. It's been an absolute pleasure to hear your stories. I love it.
I agree.
Thank you so much for having me. Continued success, and I'll keep you posted on, all the good things and the new wins on my
I
end.
can't wait to
Oh,
see all the stuff
I
with
got one
LL
more
Cool
thing.
J.
Yes.
Yes.
And I have decided, because I've spoken at a lot of different corporate events and music events, but I've never, and in my own life, I have these power chants that help me to encourage myself when I'm like, okay, that was great, but okay, what's next, right? And so I've decided to have my own signature event called Confidence Con, and it is going to be September 13th It is to awaken your personal star power, right? We were all born with it, but somehow along the way we abandon it. So my job is to help you re-champion that story, energize the story, help you remember all the greatness that is in you, help you to stop. And even in my own life, I feel like I was watching a Will Smith YouTube video, and he was talking about how you can be at the highest point of good, right? You're like the best at being good, but like I'm also trying to annihilate what great looks like. And so that's what the Confidence Con will be about. It will be your ultimate destination to delivering presence and confidence at peak performance. September 13th.
People, you better be there. That is
Better be
KJ
there.
Rose, the Rose Effect. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.
All right, folks. That's our show. Tune in to Unglossy, Decoding Brand and Culture on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. And follow us on Instagram at UnglossyPod to join the conversation. Until next time, I'm Tom Frank.
I'm Jeffrey Sledge.
Smicky! That was good.